All right. So like Mike said, if you've got questions, please feel free to send them in. I'll get to as many as we can. Ask early, ask often. We want to make sure that you get the answers that you came to today's session to get. All right. So I wanted to talk to you, Mike, first off, about how the NGA is working towards neurodiversity inclusion. To start us off, could you give us the definition of neurodiversity that y'all used most? Who are we talking about when we discuss, this neurodiversity initiative?
Hey, thanks a lot, Megan. Just make sure you can hear me now. So, first of all, I just want to say thanks to Power to Fly to include us in your agenda and be part of this event. And I'm glad you asked, your question in the way, like, how do we define it? Because I feel like the least qualified person here to be able to give a medical definition of anything. But neurodiversity is really, as we see it, an umbrella term. It's not necessarily a diagnosis, and conditions that fall under that umbrella term of neurodiversity can include conditions like dyslexia, Tourette's, ADHD, high anxiety, and of course, also autism. So in this discussion, I'll really be focusing on NGA's neurodiversity pilot. And even though we define the pilot under the umbrella term of neurodiversity, we did the pilot with the specific focus on autism. And then after we went through the pilot that I'll talk about, at the end of it, we realized that, we wanted to kind of focus our agency's efforts on the conditions that fall under that umbrella term as we encounter them, and not limit our efforts just to autism. So, we see it as neurodiversity describes the idea, that people experience and interact with the world in different ways. And there's not one right way to do that. There's not one right way to think or to learn or to behave. And in fact, we don't even want a workforce that thinks and learns and behaves the exact same way. So we really see that as a benefit, and we're trying to figure out how to harness and utilize, the power of that diversity in our organization.
Oh, loving that answer. And you're right. It is a big tent, and it's getting bigger every day. And you're right. Like, for a very long time, conditions like autism and Asperger's were kind of seen as the only thing within the neurodivergent umbrella. And you called out exactly, like, things like dyslexia that previously to my diagnosis, I honestly didn't consider to be part of, neurodivergence, but obviously that was, an incorrect assumption on my part. I live with bipolar type 2 and ADHD, in addition to like major depressive disorder, anxiety, all the fun stuff. But you're right. It is very important to remember that when we're talking about neurodivergence, is there something about your brain that doesn't work like everybody else's? That's basically it. Sometimes it's a superpower, sometimes it's a hindrance, but, we try and make the best of it and do what you can with what you're given. Let's talk about the catalyst for NGA becoming more inclusive of neurodiversity. Was there a specific instance, maybe a pattern of things? Like, what really started this for y'all?
I would say what started for us was really trying to attract talent for our mission. And I suspect most of the audience has never heard of NGA and, didn't know that we were part of the DoD or the intelligence community. But I'd like to just take a second and explain what it is we do, because that's connected into the answer to your question. So, NGA, as you said, stands for the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency. And I know a lot of people are asking, like, what is geospatial intelligence? It's the exploitation and analysis of imagery and geospatial information. So basically, how do you describe the Earth? How do you assess what's on the Earth? How do you visually depict physical features that are important? And how do you geographically reference activities and events that are happening on that Earth? And that's what we do. So in short, we call geospatial intelligence GeoInt, but it consists of imagery intelligence and geospatial intelligence. So we provide GeoInt for our nation's security to support activities like, the development of strategic intelligence, safety of navigation, both for air and sea, humanitarian and disaster relief, defense of our homeland, and a whole myriad of things, including, supporting crisis that people in our services are doing around the world. So with that background, we've seen throughout history and certainly in today's commercial and technology environment, that there's some pretty stiff competition for people that have atypical thinking skills, for people that think a little differently, have great insight, creativity, innovation. And we're, like I said, we're in competition for that talent. And we need our mission at NGA to get access to the best talent to be able to support, the communities and decision makers that we support. So like, I would say that, our effort to do this isn't purely altruistic. At the same time, it aligns to our agency's core values, and we all know it's the right thing to do. So it was really a win-win, and we've seen, industry be successful at this, and we want government to be successful at it too.
Oh, loving this, loving to hear about this. And you're right, we do talk about this a lot where, if you have problems that have yet to be able to be solved, you don't solve them by continuing to try the same things you've always tried, right? And so bringing that difference of abilities, difference of background, difference of thought process is massive, really. And, for a very long time, the stigma around being neurodiverse or having a difference with how you learn or how you input information was seen as a hindrance. And it's really nice to see people really understanding that you can take advantage of those differences in a way that not only is good for the business, but is good for the person as well. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about the neurodiversity inclusion pilot program that the NGA has been developing. Now, this was in partnership with MITRE, M-I-T-R-E, yeah? Yep. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Sure. We haven't really been at it that long. We started in December 2020, and we collaborated with MITRE. And for folks that don't know MITRE, it's a federally funded research and development center, or what we call FFRDC. And together with MITRE, we launched what we were going to do as a 6-month effort. And, a little bit of work went in before that, a lot of work went into it afterwards, but it was more or less a 6-month effort to focus on those on the autism spectrum to see, could they be successful in supporting our mission? And so we really took this on as an end-to-end learning opportunity, not only for our agency, but also for the US government, because this hasn't been done in government before. And so, as I said, there's been industries and other governments outside of the US, that have really been doing this or going after this for the last 7 or 8 years. And, because of the spirit of it and the importance of it, they've worked together and they've shared lesson learned, and they have what they called an industry playbook. It's Autism at Work playbook, and you can Google it and get it for free. And it's a very thick document that just lays a blueprint on how to do it. The challenge is we don't know if that applies to the US government, because the government's a different beast altogether. And so MITRE won a prize, a government prize, to try to figure out a playbook for the US government. And so, we raised our hand and we were first, and we decided to give it a try. And I'll say, even though we had all the support with MITRE, and they had a service provider called Melwood that was helping them, and that was all great, but we had a lot of work to do inside our agency. And the thing that I think led to some of our success in being able to do this, like the key pieces, was one, we had full leadership support. It was good for our mission, it was good for our people, and our leadership was all in, like from our director on down. The other thing, and this was just a stroke of luck, can't take credit for it at all, but early on in December, we established this working group, and we told people what we were doing, and we said, hey, we need some volunteers, we need to really organize and go after this. And all these people raised their hand. Well, by luck, it turned out to be this most amazing cross section across our agency. So we had our human resource people, we had our lawyers, we had our diversity and equity experts, we had our security experts that do polygraphs, we had our mission people, we just had everybody in the room. And not only the diversity of people who could figure this out for our agency, but we also had a cross-cut vertically. We had some of the entry-level people all the way up to some of the most senior people in the agency. So we met every week, for 2 years, And when we had a challenge, we had the people in the room to help us figure it out. And if we couldn't
That's so
figure it out right
cool.
then, yeah, they knew who to contact, and our issues would get resolved pretty quickly. So that was really helpful. And then the last thing I think that really helped, and this was also a surprise to me. So we did some things right. We also learned some things, but was as word got out about this, the employee engagement across the agency went through the roof. And I guess because, like you were saying, people don't really talk about it very openly.
Mhm.
We had so many moms and dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, who were directly connected to this issue, who worry every day about the future, of a loved one or a friend who has autism. And they were so proud, that we were trying to do something, that they just came out of the woodwork to be helpful. And when you have leadership support, when you have the workforce support, and you have all the people you need in the room, it really kind of gets you going in the right direction.
I love that. And you're right. That top-down direction, that top-down buy-in is massive, right? It's important to know that, just because something's important to you personally and the company says that it's something that's important to them, really putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to those kinds of things truly shows. And I love that y'all had that cross-section, because it is important to hear from all levels and as well as all teams, across an organization, having that global or holistic take on like what's happening and what you're trying to do has got to be invaluable. And
Yeah.
it's so cool that you were able to kind of like touch it in various parts of the organization, as opposed to just coming from HR or just coming from, DEIB, and
Right.
trying to spread that throughout the org. That's
Hey
so
Meg,
cool.
can I just add one thing too?
Yeah, please. Oh, always. I'm sorry. I
No,
talk too much. So thank you.
no.
Please, please.
This just came to me as you were talking, but like one of the most important elements of that came together was, few of us realized how many people who were already on the spectrum were already in our workforce, and they were getting through their experience through brute force, without sort of this concentrated focus and support on the way and things like that. And so, as we kind of kept going and they kept seeing that we were serious, a lot of them became part of that working group. And there's a saying, with us if about us. And so, every decision that was made and every recommendation that was made and everything we did was informed by people who were already in our building and experienced, who were on the spectrum.
That is so, so wonderful to hear. And, you're right. I feel like there are a lot of people that work with people who have neurodivergence, within their intersectionalities. And probably a lot of them don't know. A couple speakers ago, we were talking about neurodiversity in women and how it's far more likely to be masked or to be hidden. People work kind of find those workarounds like you had talked about. And, a lot of it comes from that place of not knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable at your place of work or with your supervisor or with your team. So yeah, taking that out of the equation and being like, no, this is safe. This is somewhere you can come to bring these concerns or these questions or these needs, does so much to not only help people who are already disclosing, but show and model that behavior for people who could benefit from this, but don't yet feel safe enough to disclose. So when it comes to that pilot program, were there any like actionable takeaways you were able to glean from it in terms of like hiring or internal processes?
Oh yeah, great question. I mean, we learned a lot. We had a lot of lessons learned from the pilot, and what our way forward is to kind of take everything we learned and normalize it as part of our regular hiring processes. Using our people with disabilities program, using special hiring authorities for people with disabilities, but just normalize it. And so one of the ways that we can do that is, really have more effective processes in place for hiring neurodivergent talent. And one of the biggest barriers was right up front, is the interview process. Somebody with autism may not look the interviewer in the eye. They may fidget through the whole interview. They may be distracted by a noise or a sensation or the lights are too bright, they're too dim, just things can throw them off. And so really working with them to have a comfortable and safe interview environment, and then also to do the interview in a way that we are conscious of how we're communicating, like direct communications, ask specific questions, don't use idioms, don't use a lot of acronyms, don't use vague references, like really go after point by point. The other thing we did was we coached all the people that were, being considered as future employees and how to do an interview. And so many of them probably hadn't had a formal government interview in their lives. And so it was kind of meeting that in the middle, providing clear instructions, explaining how the process works, meeting with them before, accommodating any need, allowing them to have somebody else in the room with them if they needed the support and comfort, to be able to feel safe. So that was really important. Another, and really all we're trying to do is just create a level playing field, not give anybody an advantage, but just normalize the interview process for someone who's on the spectrum. And then another thing was a big takeaway. I mentioned that workforce that raised their hand that was so supportive and everything. A lot of them volunteered to be buddies and mentors, because if somebody's in a pilot program, they want to make a good impression. They may be afraid to ask a coworker or a supervisor 10 questions in the same day, but everything is new and all of that. And so, we did training for all the buddies and mentors, even though many of them had direct experience, and then made them let the candidates select who they wanted after a week-long getting to know you so they could find the best fit. And then the buddies would be there to just, here's the cafeteria, here's how you, print a document, here's, because everything is hard, but just really kind of help them feel safe and still make the best impression with their peers and supervisors. And then mentors, obviously, kind of giving them a bigger picture sort of understanding. Frequent feedback. Folks on the spectrum may need feedback multiple times a day, maybe once a day at the end of every day, maybe feedback in the beginning of the day, the middle of the day, and the end of the day. But they, are not typically picking up on the subtle cues, especially with minimal communication and things like that. So just, getting in the habit of frequent feedback with direct communication was really helpful to support not just getting them in the door, but giving them a full and meaningful career. We looked at some of the things that help with retention and, addressing them where they are along the way. And so this can include everything from reasonable accommodations. We stood up connection opportunities with peers, again, the buddies and mentors, the coaches, and even sensing sessions where we could have difficult conversations with people who were neurodiverse and people who were neurotypical. Two other things I'll just mention really fast were helpful. One was in government, there's just, policy regulations, 100-step processes to do things, and it's complicated, and so we're in the process of doing this, creating slick sheets and simple guides to do the kinds of things that they might want to know about. For example, the employee assistance program, or a reasonable accommodation, or how to do a timesheet, just things that are not intuitive if you haven't been there a while. And we're creating a website where, for the neurodiverse community, where everything can go in one place, and then they can also augment it. I mean, this will be a living website that'll evolve over time, but just a one-stop shop resource, because it's just, there's a lot that happens, and it's hard to know what to do sometimes. And the last thing is really support to supervisors. The supervisors are the folks on the front line, and we trained every supervisor, and we trained co-workers and things like that if requested. But then you go, good luck, supervisor, and we wanted the supervisors to have a network where they could support each other. Respecting confidentiality and privacy issues and all of that, but just, create a community among the supervisors, but also make sure that we stayed in touch with them to address any challenges or issues early so that these, so that we could be effective in working them out. And so, if I have one priority in all of that, it's support to the supervisors, every step of the way. And, a lot of the supervisors have direct experience. So, the placement of where you put the employee and the supervisor is also important.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, I'm loving as you're kind of ticking off the different ways that you've tried to ensure that this program is not only effective and working, but also like it can continue to grow, it can scale, it can be, something that really benefits people. We had a chime in the chat thread. Kay had said, I was humiliated in a meeting by a colleague for losing focus during a meeting when someone turned on the bright overhead lights. And I can remember being in similar situations, trying to have like a one-on-one with someone in a group office setting, open concept, all of that. I remember trying to maintain focus while 3 other people were on sales calls around me, and I'm trying to like train somebody on something completely unrelated. These are all things where a small accommodation honestly would have made a huge difference. And knowing that, not only is this something that you support from like an organizational level, but also like y'all are providing that support to the supervisors, like you said, people that are going to be the ones handling, accommodation requests or whatever on that daily basis. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. And Kay, thank you for sharing with us. I'm so sorry you experienced that. It's rough out in these streets, right, guys? All right, we have 5 minutes left before the session ends. I want to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. One of the other questions we had was about how this disclosure is handled at the interview stage. So you talked about, some of the accommodations that are available. Is the onus here put on the applicant to disclose, or is this something that maybe like the HR, the recruiting team members offer as part of, when you're like scheduling a meeting or whatever?
Yeah, there's a lot of nuances to that. Obviously, if someone's coming in with our People with Disabilities program under Special Authorities for Hiring, it's disclosed. And whether or not the employee chooses to disclose that further is their individual choice. Like I said, we already had people in the workforce who didn't disclose. And that, again, that was their individual choice. So it really is up to the individual. And what we're trying to do is build confidence and trust in the workforce. And, we'll hopefully continue to do that so that for maybe one of the first times in their career or their lives, they may have the comfort to disclose. And we're trying to show that if someone does disclose, even if it's to, a very small group, we can help get resources to them and help them be more effective. And so it's in some ways a program of attraction. We certainly can't force anybody to disclose, and I don't even have access to information. It's just that's all protected. So the individual has to take that action and make that choice.
Yeah, I think that's very, it is one of those things that it is kind of an imperfect system, right? Because people might very reasonably have some reservations or not feel safe disclosing. But, it's like we've talked about on a couple other chats today. I'm not sure if you've seen them, but it's kind of the Field of Dreams analogy, right?
Right.
If you build it, they will come. You can't say like, hey, we're going to have a baseball field here in 6 weeks, so come like stand out in a field. Like, right. I think it is important for, for hiring teams to recognize that this might be, a request that people have. So yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
No, all you.
I was just saying, in the meantime, our goal is to train everybody in the organization about the importance of inclusion and specifically neurodiversity, so that it might start a conversation at some point or increase that trust. But we're not just training supervisors. Our goal is to train everybody and continuously train them and don't stop. So
excellent. All right, we're going to have to start wrapping up here, but I just want to highlight for everybody, if you are, if anything that Michael has said today really piques your interest about the NGA, they are actually taking part in our virtual job fair tomorrow. So that's happening from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. My colleagues are going to share some links in the chat thread to where you can register for it, check out the other companies that'll be there presenting. But absolutely check out the NGA. I'm a little bit biased. My best friend's husband actually works for y'all in the Dayton office. So I had a little bit of familiarity with the NGA going in. Sorry, y'all, making a mess of my own office. But even if this is the first time you've heard about the NGA, definitely check them out. It's a really, really, really interesting org. Michael, is there anything you want to share with people before we leave today?
I just want to say that, again, thank you to Power to Fly for raising this and giving me the opportunity. And, we still have a lot of work to do, but we're making a lot of partnerships across the government. People are calling us all the time and they're trying to model what we're doing. So I'm hoping to see big change in the future, not just in our organization, but everywhere.
Oh, love it. Cannot wait to see it. Thank you, Michael. This was really, really great to get to sit down and talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.